My name is Evelyn Foster. I'm 36 years old, and the moment I realized my relationship was already over didn't come with a fight, or a confession, or even raised voices. It came with a sentence. I think I found someone who fits me better. At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant by better. Now I do. Ethan Carter was 34. We had been together for 7 years. Not married, but close enough that most people assumed it was just a matter of time. We owned a modest house on the east side of Portland, shared bills, shared routines, shared a life that, on paper, made perfect sense. No children, just a golden retriever and a rhythm that worked. At least it used to. I work as a logistics manager for a regional shipping company. My days start before sunrise, solving problems before trucks even leave their loading docks. I like structure. I like knowing what comes next. I like systems that work. Ethan used to say that was one of the things he admired about me. He also used to say it was the thing that made me predictable. He was a freelance lifestyle photographer. His world ran on late nights, last-minute bookings, spontaneous trips, and conversations that stretched far past midnight. For years, we balanced each other out. Stability and spontaneity, order and chaos, until chaos started sounding more appealing than balance. Looking back now, the shift didn't happen all at once. It started about 8 months earlier, when Ethan began using a word I hadn't heard from him before. Stuck. Not unhappy, not angry. Just stuck. I feel like I'm living the same day over and over, he told me one Saturday morning, scrolling through his phone while his coffee went cold. I remember glancing at him, confused. We have a good life, I said carefully. He nodded. Yeah, that's the problem. At the time, I thought he was just restless. Creative people get like that sometimes. They crave change, stimulation, something new. What I didn't realize was that someone had already been feeding that restlessness. Kara, Ethan's younger sister. Kara liked to call herself free-spirited, which mostly meant she rotated through jobs, apartments, and relationships every 6 months while posting quotes online about living without limits. For years, Ethan treated her like she was fearless. I always thought she was just unstable. Somewhere along the way, her voice got louder in his head than mine. She says people like us settle too early, Ethan mentioned once, casually, like he was commenting on the weather. People like us? I asked. People who choose safety over experience. I didn't respond to that. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I could already feel something shifting underneath the surface. The language wasn't his anymore. It sounded borrowed, rehearsed, like he was slowly becoming someone else. Then came the sentence I couldn't forget. Some people are meant to build safe lives, he said one morning, still staring at his phone. And some people are meant to chase exciting ones. I remember standing there, holding a mug I hadn't even taken a sip from yet. And which one do you think you are? I asked. He didn't answer right away. But he didn't have to, because about a month later, I got my answer. It was a Tuesday night. I remember that because Tuesdays were always the most forgettable part of my week. I got home around 7, fed the dog, reheated leftovers, and opened my laptop to finish a few emails. Everything felt normal. Routine. Safe. Ethan walked into the kitchen about 20 minutes later, and I knew something was wrong before he even said a word. It was the way he stood there. Still, composed, watching me like he was preparing for a conversation he had already rehearsed. Are you okay? I asked. He exhaled slowly. I need more than okay. That was how it started. Not with emotion. Not with hesitation. With a speech. Carefully constructed, almost clinical. He talked about growth, about alignment, about how people evolve and outgrow versions of themselves. Every sentence sounded like it had been borrowed from somewhere else. Maybe Kara. Maybe someone new. I let him talk. He said he felt trapped by routine. He said our relationship had become predictable. He said he had spent years being the responsible partner, and now he needed to choose himself. Then he paused, and that was when everything shifted. There's someone I met, he said, my hands stilled on the keyboard. Nothing serious happened, he added quickly. Not technically, but I feel something real. I looked at him. Who? He hesitated for half a second. Then he said her name. Ria. The photographer Kara had introduced him to at some gallery event downtown. Of course. She understands me, he continued. She's spontaneous, creative. She sees the world differently. Different from me. That part didn't need to be said. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. That seemed to irritate him. And that was when the mask slipped. You've gotten too comfortable, Evelyn, he said, his voice sharper now. You treat life like a schedule. Like if everything runs on time, that means it's working. I didn't respond. Just because you keep everything stable doesn't mean it's enough, he added. There it was. Not confusion, not doubt, contempt, dressed up as self-discovery. I closed my laptop slowly. So what are you saying? I asked. He met my eyes directly. I think Ria is the better option. The words hung in the air between us. Cold, precise, final. And the way he said it, like he was stating a logical conclusion instead of ending a 7-year relationship, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. I nodded once. When are you leaving? He looked almost relieved that I didn't argue. I already packed some things, he said. I'll stay with Kara for a bit. Of course he would. That should have been my first clue about how long this had been planned. He talked about taking things slow, about doing it the right way, which apparently meant moving in stages, so it didn't look like he was leaving one relationship for another. The mental gymnastics were impressive. Does she know about me? I asked. He rolled his eyes slightly. Of course she does. She respects that I'm handling this maturely. Mature. That word again. As if dismantling a life piece by piece somehow made it responsible. He went upstairs to grab the rest of his things. 15 minutes later, he came back down with 2 suitcases and his camera bag. He paused at the door. Then he said something I would remember long after he left. Someday you'll understand that people deserve more than settling. Settling. That was what our life had become to him. A placeholder. A safe option. Something temporary until something better came along. He walked out without looking back. And just like that, the life we built together ended in silence. The strange thing about endings like that is how quiet they feel afterward. No dramatic collapse. No shattered glass or raised voices echoing through the house. Just absence. Ethan's side of the closet half empty, his shoes missing from the hallway. The faint outline on the kitchen counter where his camera bag used to sit. 7 years reduced to negative space. The first few days I moved through the house like I was adjusting to a new layout. Not grieving, not angry, just recalibrating. I kept my routine exactly the same. 4:30 a.m. alarm, coffee, feed the dog, out the door by 5:20. Work didn't change. Trucks still needed schedules. Problems still needed solving. Life, at least on the surface, continued. But then Kara started texting. At first, it was subtle. 3 days after Ethan left, she sent a photo. No message, just an image. Ethan and Kara standing at a scenic overlook somewhere outside the city. A river cutting through the valley behind them, mountains in the distance. Ethan had one arm stretched out, holding his phone, wind pushing his hair back. He looked different. Lighter, like someone who had just stepped into a version of himself he had been rehearsing for months. Kara leaned into the frame beside him, smiling like she was documenting proof of something. The caption came a second later. Finally living the life he deserves. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then I locked my phone without responding. Over the next 2 weeks, the updates kept coming. Not constantly, just enough to make sure I saw them. Photos, little comments, casual mentions dropped into conversations like they weren't intentional. Ethan and Ria drove out to the mountains at sunrise today. Oh, last-minute trip to this tiny coastal town. No plans, just vibes. He looked so much happier now. It was almost impressive. The consistency, the effort. Kara wasn't just sharing updates. She was building a narrative. And the strange part? She seemed more invested in proving Ethan's new life was perfect than Ethan did. Because Ethan himself barely contacted me at all. One message about the dog. Is he eating okay? Another about a file on the desktop. Can you send me that Lightroom folder? No apologies. No explanations. Just logistics. Like we had already transitioned into something transactional. 3 weeks after he left, he finally came back to the house. He texted first. I need to pick up the rest of my clothes. I'll come by around 6. Not a question. A statement. At 6:12, a black Jeep pulled into the driveway. I saw it through the front window. For a moment, I just stood there, watching. Then Ethan got out of the passenger side. And for the first time, I saw her. Ria. She stayed in the driver's seat, one hand resting casually on the steering wheel. Sunglasses pushed up into her hair even though the sun was already setting. Confident. Relaxed. Like she belonged exactly where she was. Ethan walked up to the door and let himself in, like nothing had changed. Hey, he said. I nodded. Your stuff's upstairs. He moved through the house quickly, efficiently. No hesitation, no nostalgia. Like he was packing up an apartment he had already emotionally vacated months ago. I stayed downstairs. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. 15 minutes later, he came back down, carrying 2 boxes. He paused near the kitchen, glancing around briefly. Place looks the same, he said. It is, I replied. There was a short silence. Then he shifted his weight slightly. I think this is better for both of us, he said. In the long run. I didn't respond. We were different people, he continued. We just didn't want to admit it. Different. That word again. Carefully chosen. Detached. As if what we had could be reduced to a mismatch instead of a decision. I hope eventually we can look back and see this as a good thing, he added. Like we both ended up where we were supposed to be. I met his eyes. And where is that? I asked. He hesitated for just a second. Then he said it. With people who actually match us. Compatible. Aligned. The language was still there. Still not his. Still rehearsed. I nodded slowly. Then I guess you got what you wanted. Something flickered across his face at that. Not guilt. Not regret. Just discomfort. Like the conversation wasn't following the script he expected. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. I didn't argue. Instead, I picked up one of the boxes and walked it toward the front door. I'll help you, I said. We carried the rest of his things out in silence. When we stepped outside, Rhea glanced over from the driver's seat. She gave me a small nod. Polite. Neutral. Like we were two strangers acknowledging each other in passing. Ethan loaded the boxes into the back of the Jeep. Then he turned back to me. For what it's worth, I do want you to be happy, Evelyn. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was kind. Because it sounded like something people say when they've already convinced themselves they're not the one responsible for the damage. I will be, I said simply. He nodded. Then he got into the passenger seat. The Jeep pulled out of the driveway a few seconds later. And just like that, he was gone again. For good this time. Or at least, that's what I thought. The next few weeks were quiet. No more updates from Kara. No more messages from Ethan. Just silence. Real silence this time. And slowly, something inside me started to settle. Not heal. Not yet. But stabilize. I stopped expecting my phone to light up. Stopped replaying conversations in my head. Stopped wondering if I had missed something along the way. Because the truth was simple. He didn't leave because something was broken. He left because he believed something better was waiting. And people who think like that don't usually look back. At least, not right away. It was almost 2 months later when my phone rang one night, 10:40 p.m. Kara. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Her name hadn't shown up in weeks. And for a moment, I considered ignoring it. Because calls from Kara only ever meant one of two things. Bragging. Or blame. But something about the time made me pause. So I answered. Hello? The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not on the line. In her voice. Kara was never quiet. She was loud, confident, always sounding like she was performing for an audience, even over the phone. But that night, she sounded different. Evelyn, are you home? She asked. I frowned slightly. Yes. Are you alone? That was when something shifted. A small, sharp instinct at the back of my mind. What do you want, Kara? There was a pause, long enough to feel deliberate. Then she exhaled. Ethan needs a place to stay. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. 2 months. That was how long the better option lasted. What happened to Rhea? I asked. Silence. Longer this time. Then she said carefully, they're having some issues. Issues. I leaned back slightly in my chair. Define issues. Kara hesitated. Then the story started to unravel. Apparently, the spontaneity Ethan found so exciting came with conditions he hadn't considered. Rhea traveled constantly, sometimes for weeks at a time. She liked independence, space, freedom. And somewhere along the way, Ethan had started treating their situation like something more permanent, more structured, more predictable. The exact thing he said he didn't want anymore. She thinks things move too fast, Kara continued. She just needs some time. I didn't interrupt. She asked him to take his things and give her space, she added. Space. The same word, the same tone, the same justification. I closed my eyes for a brief second, not out of emotion, out of recognition. Where is he now? I asked. At my place, Kara said quickly. But it's not ideal. My landlord's already complaining. It's just temporary. Of course it was. Everything was always temporary until it wasn't. So you're calling me because... I prompted. Kara's voice tightened slightly. Because he's still your partner. Was. But I didn't correct her. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. And what exactly does Ethan want? Another pause. Then more quietly this time. He wants to know if he can come back. Just for a little while. There it was. Not regret. Not reconciliation. Convenience. The backup plan. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds. Then I said very calmly, no. The silence on the other end of the line didn't feel surprised. It felt offended. Like I had just violated some unspoken agreement that no one had actually discussed, but everyone assumed would hold. No? Kara repeated, slower this time, like she needed to hear it again to process it properly. No, I said again, not louder, not harsher, just clearer. Another pause. Then the shift happened. The tone changed first. "Well, that's a little cold, don't you think?" she said, her voice tightening just enough to lose its earlier hesitation. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the dark reflection of my living room window. "I don't," I replied. "He doesn't have anywhere else to go right now," she continued quickly. "It would just be for a few days, maybe a week, until things settle down." Settle down. The same phrasing Ethan used when he left. The same vague promise of temporary disruption that somehow justified permanent decisions. I didn't interrupt her. I let her keep going. "We're not asking for anything unreasonable," she added. "You two are still together. Technically." There it was. Not emotional, not personal. Technical. Like this was a contract dispute instead of a collapsed relationship. I exhaled slowly. 2 months ago, I said, Ethan stood in this house and told me he found a better option. Kara didn't respond. "He packed his things, walked out the door, and left with her," I continued. "He made a mistake," she cut in quickly. "People do that." "Maybe," I said, "but some mistakes aren't temporary." Her patience snapped just slightly. "So you're just going to leave him out there?" she asked, "after everything you've had together?" I almost smiled at that. Not because it was ironic, because it was predictable. "Why are you calling me Kara?" I asked quietly. A beat, then irritation. "Because you're the only one who can help right now." "No, because I was the only one who used to." "Where is he?" I asked. "In my living room," she said. "He's been sitting there all night. He's not doing great." I pictured it for a moment. Ethan, sitting somewhere unfamiliar, waiting. Not for understanding, for access. "He's been asking what to do," Kara continued. "He doesn't have a plan." I closed my eyes briefly. That part didn't surprise me. Because people who leave stability for excitement rarely think about what happens when excitement ends. "Did he ask you to call me?" I asked. Another pause. "Too long." "No," she admitted finally. "But he wants to talk to you." Of course he did. Now, when there was something to fix. "No," I said again. "Evelyn." "No," I repeated, cutting her off this time. "There's nothing he can say that changes the situation. He just wants to explain," she insisted. "He feels terrible." I let out a quiet breath. "Explanations matter before someone leaves," I said, "not after." That landed. I could hear it in the way her breathing changed on the other end. Then came the push. "You're being bitter," she said flatly. "No," I replied. "I'm being clear." "He didn't cheat on you," she added quickly. "He was honest." I almost laughed at that. Honest. That was the word she chose. "He told you before anything serious happened," she continued. "That counts for something." I stared at the ceiling for a second, then back at the window. "He told me he found someone better," I said. "That's not honesty. That's a decision." Silence again. This time, heavier. "She's not even in the picture anymore," Kara said finally, her voice lower now. "Doesn't that change anything?" "No." It clarified everything. "No," I said. Another pause. Then she tried a different angle. "If you really cared about him," she said slowly, "you'd help him when things are hard, not just when they're easy." I let that sit for a moment. Then I asked quietly, "Did he say that?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because that told me everything. Ethan wasn't even part of this conversation. Not really. He was sitting somewhere waiting for the outcome, while someone else negotiated for him. "I'm not talking to him tonight," I said. "You're really not even going to hear him out?" she asked. "No. He deserves a chance to explain." "He had one," I replied. "The night he left." Kara exhaled sharply. "You're acting like this is permanent." "It is," I said. That was the moment the last bit of patience disappeared from her voice. You're being petty," she snapped. "People make mistakes. Marriages survive worse than this." "We're not married," I said calmly. "That's not the point." No," I said, "it is. Because if we had been married, maybe there would have been something formal to undo. Something legal, something binding. But what we had ended the moment he redefined it. He said you weren't enough," I continued quietly. "Not in those exact words, but that's what better option means." "He didn't mean it like that." "He said it," I cut in. "That's what matters." Silence. Then softer, almost reluctant. "He has nowhere else to go." There it was. The truth. Stripped of argument. Stripped of justification. Just reality. I nodded to myself even though she couldn't see it. "That's unfortunate," I said. "Evelyn, I'm not his safety net," I added. Her voice sharpened again. "So that's it? 7 years and you just shut the door?" I let that question hang for a second, then answered it honestly. "I didn't shut the door," I said. "He walked out of it." That one hit. I could feel it, because she didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was quieter, more controlled. "He thought he was choosing something better," she said. "I know," I replied. "And now he knows he was wrong." I tilted my head slightly. Then he learned something, I said. That's not how relationships work, she snapped. No, I said, that's exactly how they work. Choices. Consequences. No guarantees. She went silent again. For longer this time. Then finally, so you're really not going to help him? I didn't hesitate. No. A sharp inhale on the other end. Then one last attempt. He might lose everything. I stared at my reflection in the window. Then said the only thing that felt true. He already did. Click. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, setting it on the table beside me. And for the first time since Ethan walked out of that house 2 months earlier, everything felt settled. Not resolved. Not healed. But defined. Clear. Final. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because the next morning, when I opened my front door to leave for work, there were 3 suitcases sitting on my porch, and Ethan was sitting right beside them. For a moment, I thought I was still half asleep. The early morning air was cold, the kind that makes everything feel sharper than it should. My coffee was still warm in my hand, keys in the other, routine carrying me forward without thought, until I saw him, Ethan, sitting on my front porch like he had been there for a while. 3 suitcases lined up neatly beside him, the same ones he packed the night he left. The black one, the gray roller, the tan case with his camera gear. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he stood up quickly. Evelyn. I didn't respond. I stepped fully outside and closed the door behind me. Not slammed. Just closed. A boundary. He took a step forward, words already rushing out. I know this looks bad, he said. I didn't know where else to go. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Because I wanted him to hear himself. Kara hadn't exaggerated. He didn't look like the version of himself from those photos. No wind in his hair. No careless confidence. No curated excitement. Just someone tired. Unsteady. Like the ground underneath him had shifted without warning. I tried calling, he continued quickly. You didn't pick up. I know, I said. That seemed to throw him off for a second. I needed to see you, he added. See me. Not apologize. Not explain. See. His eyes flicked toward the house behind me. Then back to me. I'm sorry, he said. There it was. The word he hadn't used once the night he left. Now it came out easily. Too easily. I made a mistake, he continued. I didn't understand what I had. I let him talk. Not because I believed it. Because I wanted to hear how far he would go. I thought I needed something different, he said. Something more exciting. But it wasn't real. Not the way I thought it was. Rhea. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. I should have listened to you, he added. I should have appreciated what we had. What we had? Past tense. Convenient. I let Kara get in my head, he said quickly. She kept telling me I deserved more, that I was settling, that there were better options out there, and I believed it. I watched him carefully. He shifted the blame with precision. Not entirely, just enough to soften his own responsibility. And Rhea, he hesitated. She wasn't who I thought she was. Of course she wasn't. She didn't want anything serious, he continued. Not really. I thought we were building something, but she wanted freedom. Space. No expectations. The same words. Recycled. Returned. I realized it too late, he said quietly. There it was. Not regret. Timing. He looked at me then. Really looked this time. I know I hurt you, he said. I know I don't deserve anything from you right now. But I need somewhere to stay, just for a little while, until I figure things out. There it was. The core of it. Stripped of emotion. Stripped of apology. Nita. I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was, he added quickly. I need help. Help. Not us. Not repair. Just access. I let the silence stretch. He shifted again, uncomfortable now. Waiting. Expecting. Because somewhere in his mind, this was the part where I softened. Where 7 years outweighed 2 months. Where history overruled choice. I stepped forward. Not toward the door. Toward the suitcases. He watched me, confusion flickering across his face. I bent down and picked up the largest one. Heavy. Familiar. I set it upright beside the others. Then I straightened and looked at him. This house stopped being your home the day you chose your better option, I said. The words landed slowly. I could see it in his expression. Not anger. Not disbelief. Recognition. Like something he already knew, but hadn't fully accepted yet. That's not what he started. It is, I said calmly. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping in now. I said something stupid, he insisted. I didn't mean it like that. You meant it enough to leave, I replied. That stopped him. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I didn't think it would turn out like this, he said finally. I nodded slightly. I know. That seemed to catch him off guard more than anything else I'd said. No, he repeated. Yes, I said, because this is how it usually goes. Excitement without structure. Freedom without responsibility. It works until it doesn't. Evelyn, please, he said, his voice tightening now. I don't have anywhere else to go. There it was again. Not love. Not regret. Need. He looked past me toward the door, toward the life he walked away from. I just need a few days, he said. A week at most. I'll stay out of your way. I'll figure something out. I held his gaze. Steady. Unmoved. You already figured something out, I said. 2 months ago. That was a mistake, he snapped. Frustration breaking through now. Why are you acting like people can't fix things? Because some things aren't meant to be fixed, I said quietly. Silence. The kind that doesn't invite argument. He stared at me for a long moment. Then his voice dropped. So that's it? He asked. You're just done? I thought about that. Not the question. The answer. I was done the night you left, I said. His expression shifted. Something in it cracked. Not dramatically. Just enough. Where am I supposed to go? He asked. The same question. Different tone. Less expectation. More reality. I tilted my head slightly. That's something you should have thought about before you decided you had a better option. It wasn't cruel. It was accurate. He flinched anyway. Then he laughed. Once. Short. Empty. I can't believe this, he muttered. I didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. I stepped past him, walking toward my car. He didn't follow. Didn't try to stop me. Evelyn, he said once more. I paused, not turning around. I really am sorry, he said. I believed him. That was the part that made it simple. Because regret didn't change decisions. And apologies didn't undo choices. I know, I said. Then I got into my car and drove away. For the first time since he walked out of my life, I didn't look back. I expected that to be the end of it. After I drove away that morning, I assumed Ethan would do what everyone eventually does when a door closes. Find another one. Portland isn't a small city. There are always couches, spare rooms, temporary solutions for people willing to look. But what I didn't account for was how many bridges he had already burned. Around noon, my phone started vibrating. Unknown number. I ignored it. A few minutes later, it rang again. Then again. By the fourth call, I answered. Not out of curiosity, just to stop the noise. Hello? Evelyn, his voice. Quieter than before. Controlled. But underneath it, something strained. You borrowed someone's phone? I asked. Yes, he said. Mine died. Of course it did. Temporary problems stacked on top of bigger ones. What do you want, Ethan? I asked. A pause. I just need to talk to you, he said. We already did. Not like this. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my office. We said everything we needed to say this morning. No, we didn't, he insisted. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. Explain. That word again. You had your chance, I said calmly. The night you left. That's not fair, he said quickly. I didn't understand things the way I do now. Understanding after consequences. Convenient. I get it now, he continued. What we had, it meant something. It still does. I didn't respond, because meaning wasn't the issue. Choice was. 7 years, Evelyn, he said, his voice tightening. That doesn't just disappear. He was right. It didn't disappear. It ended. 7 years didn't end today, I said. They ended the moment you decided I wasn't enough. I never said that, he pushed back. You didn't have to, I replied. You said someone else was better. Silence. Longer this time. Then, softer. I was wrong. I believed that too. But belief wasn't the same as reversal. People make mistakes, he added. Relationships survive worse than this. That line again. Recycled. Borrowed. Probably Kara's. As some do, I said. This one didn't. His breathing changed slightly. Slower. He was running out of angles. I don't have anything right now, he said finally. No place, no plan, nothing. There it was. The truth. No framing. No philosophy. Just reality. And for a second, I almost felt something. Not enough to change my mind. Just enough to recognize the weight of it. Then he asked the question. Is this really it? I closed my eyes briefly. Not to think. Because I already knew. Yes, I said. Another silence. This one heavier. Final. Just like that, he asked. No, I said. Not just like that. 7 years didn't end in a moment. They ended in decisions. In words. In choices that did not leave room for return. They ended when you left believing you had something better, I continued. I could hear him breathing on the other end. But he didn't interrupt. And I think you should go find out exactly how good that was, I added. The line stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then, okay, he said. Not agreement. Not acceptance. Just acknowledgement. Then the call ended. I set my phone down and went back to work. Not because I wasn't affected, but because I didn't need to sit in it anymore. Later that afternoon, around 3:15, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Kara. The message was long, longer than anything she had sent before, and the tone completely different. "You're being cruel." That was the first line. I read the rest without reacting. According to her, Ethan had spent the entire morning driving around the city. No destination, no plan, just moving. At some point, he had parked outside a grocery store and stayed there for over an hour. Eventually, he broke down, called her again, asked what to do. I paused there, not because I was surprised, because I wasn't. People like Ethan don't expect consequences. They expect stories, dramatic ones. The kind where they leave, realize their mistake, and come back to a version of life that's been waiting patiently for them. But real life doesn't pause. It moves, with or without them. Kara kept typing. "You're acting like a robot." "You should have some compassion. If you keep doing this, he's going to lose everything." I read that last line twice. Then I typed back, slowly, carefully. "He didn't lose everything today." I paused, then finished the sentence. "He lost it 2 months ago." I hit send. No anger, no hesitation, just clarity. She didn't respond. Not that day. Not after that. About a week later, I heard through a mutual friend that Ethan had rented a small studio apartment across the city. Nothing permanent, just something to get by. Ria never contacted him again. Apparently, she was traveling, posting photos from different countries like nothing had ever happened. Like he had never been part of the story. As for me, I filed the paperwork not long after, not out of anger, out of completion. The strange thing is, when I think about it now, I don't feel bitter. I don't feel angry. I don't even feel sad. I feel clear. Ethan wanted something exciting, something better, something different from the life we built. And he got it. For a while, long enough to realize something most people only understand too late. That stability isn't the absence of excitement. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible. And when you walk away from that, you don't always get to walk back. The lesson I took from all of it is simple. When someone tells you they've found a better option, believe them and let them go. Because sometimes the only way people understand what they lost is by living without it.